Hey, I'm Dominic Romano, and I am a producer and mixing engineer for singer-songwriters all over the world. My studio is based in Northern California, and I'm excited to be here answering some questions for Forms Taking Shape.
Hello, Dominic. Thank you for joining Forms Taking Shape. So let's go with the first question. You describe your role as helping artists bring their most honest music into recorded form. How do you recognize honesty in a performance? And have you ever had to confront an artist when you felt they were hiding behind something sonically beautiful but emotionally distant?
I think it's very clear when an artist is being honest and authentic with their delivery and their music. I think it's clear to them, and it comes across clearly to me. It really is a "are we feeling it" thing. If I believe what they're saying, if I feel it, it works. It's been very rarely that I'm feeling it, but the artist says like, oh, no, I'm just kind of phoning it in, right? That doesn't really happen much. So that part of the question is really easy. How do you know when it's honest, authentic, as if it's provoking some sort of a feeling, and that the artist is agreeing? The second part of it is an interesting question. I've definitely had times where I need to kind of either set up the situation so that the artist feels comfortable to be their most honest version of themselves when they're recording, or be vulnerable while they're recording. I had an artist that I worked with quite a bit. Her name is Elle Penner. We had worked quite a bit on a bunch of like kind of indie pop style recordings. And she started doing a lot of jazz gigs. And she was super, super good at it. She developed this character of Elle, where Elle was this like 40s style jazz performer, and she's kind of like coy and has this like vaguely transatlantic accent sometimes, just because it's the vibe of the music, and like she did a really good job being that performer. Then she wrote a song, and she came in to record it with me, and this was not a jazz song. This is more of a songwriter kind of song. And what we were running up against in that session was that she was being the character Elle while trying to perform it. It was not completely, but like the character was making its way into her performance. And it wasn't feeling really authentic for what the song needed to be. And so basically what I did in that moment was I asked her, I'm hearing the character of Elle come in, but Elle didn't write this song. Elisa wrote this song, which is her real name, not the stage name. Elisa wrote this song. I want you to take me to the point that Elisa was. I want you to take me to the point where Elisa was when she wrote this song. Try and engage with that moment of when you were writing this. And it was kind of a personal song and talking about that place. Being able to identify and really make the shift between the two like characters and personalities was a really helpful thing in that moment. The next few takes we got really felt more authentic. They felt more honest. So going back to the initial question, I don't think it's a confrontation necessarily, but I do think it's setting up the situation where the artist can feel comfortable enough to have you give them feedback and trust trust your ear, and also trust that you have their back when they get vulnerable with it. Yeah.
A lot of producers develop a relationship with objects that aren't instruments: chairs, broken gear, even physical spaces. Do you have a favorite non-musical object, a piece of furniture, a room artifact, something not meant for sound?
Little tokens in the studio. I think everyone has their own version of this. I have these little like elf creature gnomes that I made when I was really young. And I have one that just kind of sits over here next to my preamp. That is a non-musical token of the studio. But more to your actual question, like things that actually cause layers. I have I run around the house and just find things that sound cool. So one of the things that I found that I really like the sound of is specifically mustard seed. Oh, it's kind of blurred out, but this says mustard seed on it. It used to be a spice in my kitchen, and then it sounded cool. And it's been all over the tracks that I've been making recently because it has a kind of a easy, has a not too attacky shaker sound. A lot of shakers can be a little bit too attacky, and it's a very very washy while still having some distinction. So that's a non-musical object I've been using quite a bit. Another one would be like wooden hangers from my closet. Maybe I'll try and show some examples of that. But if you just like hitting two wooden hangers together, they're not specifically that much different than sticks, but literally just walking around the house, finding things that have a sound to it. Recently I used like a bag, like a paper bag that you just like crumple, and I combined that with the sound of a stomp, and that made a very particular kind of crunchy kick sound. So here's the bag. You can see this is called edamame bag. If I turn it up, you're like, okay, that's just a bag getting crunched. Which, yeah, it is. But if you work that in with a kick and me like banging a fist on the table, it adds a little bit of extra crunch. We're trying to find a way to express the idea of like a bunch of people just jamming out on whatever instruments they have. And a standard drum kit was not going to get that across. So it was a process of just finding whatever was in the house and using it in a musical way, because anything can be music. Here's the mustard seed shaker shape, straight, along with the drums, obviously. I also added mustard seed to give a little extra downbeat. Panned over to the right. And then I did want a little bit more, so I did use an egg shaker as well. But in the context of this song, those sounds were similar.
Coming from violin into acoustic guitar, your sensitivity to texture is probably very layered. When you build an acoustic guitar part, do you think in terms of a single truthful performance, or do you construct it from multiple layers, double tracking, harmonic, shadows, subtle overdubs? At what point does layering stop enhancing emotion and start diluting it?
For acoustic guitar specifically, I almost always try and start from a single layer that works on its own. I think that the issue that people run into is when they think in terms of layers to the point where they ignore the individual takes. And so usually when I start with an acoustic guitar part, I think in terms of the songwriting. I start with one part, don't think about how it's going to layer up, get a performance that has the rhythmic outlines that you want, has the harmonic outlines that you want, that moves with dynamics the right way. And you can comp that together. I'm not someone who says like, oh, you've got to get it in one take, otherwise it's not an honest performance. I'm like, no, there's times where comping is needed. But I do think that if you jump to layering too quickly, you miss out on you may ignore issues in your basic tracks that maybe people can hear them, maybe you're not, but they definitely can feel the difference if you were to play better versions of those tracks that didn't have the issues, even if they're layered up. So in terms of like an actionable thing you can take from this, don't layer up until you love what you already have. That would be a kind of a go-to rule for me in production and layering guitars. So this is a song for Allison Leah and Luna Keller that I worked on called Cornerstone. And this is a good example of the layering of guitars that I'm talking about. This song started from this dadgad guitar sound. And as I was developing this song, I went all the way through the whole song with this guitar really developing. How does it rise and fall? How does it go into the chorus here? Getting those transitions right. Once I had that bass line, or that basic track, I should say, that's when I could start thinking about how is it going to layer up with other guitars. But I wanted to make sure that the whole song is going to could work with that one guitar. I'm not relying on the layers to work. So then I layered it up with a different kind of guitar. That was a dadgad tuned guitar. Here's a standard guitar, but just higher up, just with a regular G shape. And that second guitar can now follow the intricacies of that first guitar so much better because it's a developed part. And then third layer of guitars here. This one's just doing kind of a counter melody. So yeah.
You work closely with artists shaping arrangements and mixes. In a session, when you hear something technically flawed but emotionally right, do you see yourself more as a protector of that moment or someone responsible for refining it?
I'm always telling artists that I can fix pitch, I can kind of fix timing, but what I can't fix is tonality, is emotion, is quality performance. And so I try to bring that out as much as possible. Ideally, we're also going to get a version that has the right pitch, the right timing, everything like that. But if someone performs something that makes me feel, that's going to be the focus of what I try and keep going forward. And there's the reality of sometimes after a 4-hour session and you're really trying to finish something up and you're stuck on one little moment. At that point, I am the refiner. I'm rather than the protector. I'm the refiner of like, let's figure out the best version of what we have, take that and move forward, because having the artist move forward in a good headspace to complete the rest of the song is more important than getting this one tiny thing perfectly. Usually it's let's get it good enough, we'll come back to this. Finish the rest of the song, feel good, don't get stuck on anything, then come back to this moment and maybe try again. But we're not going to put ourselves in a bad headspace for getting through the rest of the song.
There's a lot of surface level talk about AI in music right now. Do you think AI challenges the craft of production, or does it actually challenge something deeper, like the idea that music is a human process of meaning making? And on a personal level, has the coming of AI changed how you frame your own role at all?
So first of all, I have a lot of ethical issues with the use of generative AI as art. But ultimately, it's kind of a ridiculous sell to me because because it's taking away the part that most musicians love about music, which is actually creating the music. And what it's offering is the ability to just do the part that everyone kind of hates. At least most of the artists I talk to don't like self-promoting. They don't like the process of release. as much as they like making music. And so I think it's an easy sell to people who aren't actually musicians. And I think it's a harder sell long-term to actual musicians when they realize that all they're going to be doing is promoting and doing the administrative stuff that they don't want to do. However, on a more philosophical note, I would define AI music as a product, and human-made music is art. Whether this gets adapted into how we function as a society that listens to music is really going to be up to the listeners, as they are the money-making people. So if you are a listener of music, if you are choosing to listen to music that's AI or not supporting real artists, you're choosing to listen to something that is being sold to you rather than connect with other humans that are creating art for that purpose. So it's up to you what you want to do.
You often step into very personal creative spaces with artists. Have you noticed patterns in how different artists respond to vulnerability in the studio? And do you ever find yourself adjusting your personality or methods to unlock something?
Okay, so absolutely, everyone who walks into the studio is coming from their own space, their own personal experiences, their own day. Maybe they just woke up and are just having a bad day so far. And it is up to me to set the tone of the space, to invite them to give themselves fully over to the process of recording and making their art and existing in a creative space and not being too attached to all of the distractions that exist, and trying to bring them in there. I wouldn't say that I adjust my personality to do so. Being my 100% self ultimately relaxes people more than if I am trying to adjust my personality in a weird way that they will probably see as manipulative. So I wouldn't say I adjust my personality. But being an empathetic person, I definitely meet someone where they're at on that day. So that's a big part of it. One of the classic questions that I ask when someone's struggling to kind of get in the headspace for themselves is to just really bring it back to their music that they care about. Show them that I care too. Going back to AI music, one of the things that AI can't do is give you a real human understanding and connection. And that's, I think, one of the benefits of working with humans during the creative process is when I'm producing and I ask someone like, what is your song about? Where were you when you wrote it? Bring me into that moment. Tell me about it, just in words. The process of discussing it can really bring them into that headspace. And being heard in that process from me, having me recount back to them what are telling me they've experienced, and being heard. I think that I think everyone who's a songwriter wants to be heard. Otherwise, we probably would have chosen a different creative path, really. Or I should say everyone who's a performing singer-songwriter. There's people that just songwrite to themselves for themselves. But for the most part, I think many of us want to feel understood and feel heard. And I think that's one of the biggest things you can bring to someone when they are having a hard time stepping into this studio space.
You've been producing and releasing music continuously while refining your sound. Looking at most recent work, what feels new to you? Not in technique, but in how you are listening or making decisions.
I think one of the things that's been on my mind lately is the power of finding not a collaborator, but the right collaborator for what needs to be done. It's really often that we as humans want to kind of quantify things into specific boxes where you're like, oh, I'm looking for a mix engineer. I'm going to go look for a mix engineer. When in reality, with music, the right mix engineer for one song isn't the right mix engineer for another song. And so something I've been trying to refine is knowing a lot of people and being able to know what their strengths are and be able to find the right collaborator for each song that I work on. And that goes for like times when I mix a lot of the songs I work on, and sometimes I just have to be honest and say, I would love to mix this. I would love the work. I would love to bring whatever I have to it. But I think honestly, the right collaborator for this is to bring it to this XYZ mix engineer that I know. And the process of being that honest also builds a lot of trust with another artist. They're going to say, oh, they've really got my song in mind, the benefit of having someone who has the best interests of the song in mind, not their own personal interests. So I think having the right collaborator is a big one. Another element that I've just been working on, and is a continuous thing to work on as a producer, and is also the case as an artist, is literally just trusting your instincts, because your unique viewpoint is all you got. That's the thing that makes you as an artist, and not AI, not a different artist. So if your instinct is saying this isn't working, trust that. Now, how you go about changing it if it isn't working, that's a whole process of learning and developing and educating yourself. But your honest sense of this is great or this is not great is all you have as an artist. And that's something you got to use and trust and protect.
When you work on music that sits outside your own sonic identity, what shifts in your listening?
So I work pretty heavily in the like acoustic, indie folk, little bit of indie pop, but on the acoustic side of it, singer-songwriter world. I do have artists that come to me and say, Dominic, you're who I want to work with as a producer. And they'll show me the song and I'll say, I don't know if I'm the right producer for this song. Maybe it's a little bit country in a way that I don't necessarily think that my playing is the perfect thing for. This goes back into like me for them saying, is this the right collaborator or not? However, on the flip side of this, if I'm not sure, but the artist has come to me and said, I want you to work on something because I believe that you are the person. And here's why. I've listened to your productions. I've heard the things that you've done. I've done my research into you as a being in addition to as your job description. One of the things that I try and do is really trust the artist's own vision. If they're bringing it to me, they've heard something that they want in their music. And so I think the shift for me is, okay, you want me to work on this. Here are the ways in which I can work on this. Here's the things I bring to the table. I can help you co-write. I can help you edit vocals. I can, play some of the parts myself. I can give you feedback on everything as we go along. But some of the things I might do for an indie folk track where I play almost all the instruments myself, I might say, for this song, I think we need a killer electric guitar soloist because that's what the song needs, and that's not me. So if I'm going to produce, that's what we need to really bring the vision to life. And it's a process of discussion with the artist of what their vision is and trying to figure that out. But trusting the artist to make the decision that's best for their music. Otherwise, I'm just literally disrespecting their own artistic integrity and voice to say, I know better than you what you want for your music. That's not how I go about producing. Okay, I think that's all the questions I have. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the places at Dominic Romano Music. And thanks for having me here. Forms.